One. And welcome to the Self Aware Entrepreneur Show with me, Lee Chambers, on this Wednesday afternoon. And joining me today, we're going to be talking about international travel. We're talking about migration. We're going to be talking about what it feels like to belong, how you adapt in different cultures, and especially given the challenges of the past 18 months where travel's been restricted and some people have not been able to return to a place where they call home. Really kind to understand how we can feel included in differing networks, how we can deal with those aspects of loneliness and isolation. And I've got the honor of having a great guest with me today, someone who I've really wanted to get on the show because his story is really powerful, but his journey is really uplifting. But it also really helps us to appreciate what it is like when we move out of an area where we are comfortable into something that's new, that's different, but it's also quite scary because it's so far removed from what we know and ultimately something that we couldn't plan out and expect. So, joining me today is the amazing Shafeem Mahmood, and Shafeen is an MBA student at the University of Greenwich. And more than anything, he's not just an MBA student. He works for an NGO. He founded the Greenwich MBA Society, and he's recently been elected as the BAME Liberation Chair for the whole university. And that is something that, a whole little campaign of getting other students to see the value that he will bring to that role. And while he's doing all these things, he's still helping out for community causes and charities. He puts a lot of effort into that social impact. And, what I really appreciate with Shafeen is that, he's been through his challenges over these past few years, but he's actually used and fueled those challenges to now make a difference for others. And that's something I massively admire. So, Shafeen, thank you for joining me on the show today.
It's a pleasure, Liam, and thank you for that, grandiose intro. I don't think, I deserve that much appreciation and praise, but I'm so very grateful, and thank you for the opportunity. And great to be here today.
No, and in some ways that modesty is very nice, Shafeen, but sometimes you do need to just tell yourself a little bit because you do some great work. So yeah, tell everyone who's tuning in today, Shafeen, a little bit about what you're currently up to at the moment.
So currently I'm studying MBA at the University of Greenwich and independently studying Chartered Accountancy qualification and the ACCA. At the moment I'm involved with multiple campus involvements as elected BAME Liberation Chair, founded a student group at my university from scratch, which currently represents, I think, over 500 plus students. And beyond that, involved with multiple charities, for example, Reach Out UK, which is a mentoring charity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, trying to keep myself busy in this very unprecedented time and situation.
Yeah, no, and that's again, we kind of look at that drive to kind of develop ourselves, and you do some great work, professionally developing yourself. You decided to get those professional qualifications alongside an MBA, as if you didn't have enough on your plate. You've decided to then, go down two educational pathways at the same time. You're achieving and doing well in both of those, and you're managing to, cut all this time up to give back to a lot of different areas. So kind of tell us a little bit more, Shafeen, about, what you were like as a young boy. Were you the curious one? Were you the entrepreneurial one? Or were you the one who was always hungry to learn?
That's a very interesting question. I think there was a mix and match of all those elements of still trying to figure out, what's happening and what do I want to do. I mean, back in Bangladesh, I think it was a more traditional kind of a system where you do your, school, high school, university, job, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, my initial trajectory of how things were going. Back in Bangladesh, but then after my high school, I applied and participated in a contest by the British Council and won a scholarship award eventually from the British Council, which kind of facilitated my my interest to study abroad, so they partially contributed towards the tuition fee, and we had the option of countries to choose where to go. I
Yeah.
chose the UK, and
Hey.
and I thought, and I think I'm very happy about the decision, by the way. Although there have been challenges, and then through the scholarship I made to the UK, I completed a degree and diploma, and currently doing MBA as well. So yeah, that has the change and the shift in paradigms has been at times challenging, but it has nonetheless been a very big learning curve coming from from Bangladesh, from Bangladesh to Britain. It has been a very interesting journey.
Yeah, so there's obviously like a significant cultural shift, and you've done incredibly well, Shafeen, and obviously being able to kind of attain that scholarship would have been challenging in itself. And there's a real honor, prestige, and privilege to have really received that. But what I do want to know, Shafeen, is can you tell us some of the challenges that have kind of arisen from that journey?
Hello, I think. Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry, we lost you for a second, Shafeen. So I was
No
just
worries.
asking, it was really, prestigious and quite an honour to receive that scholarship and the ability to choose to be an international student and forge a new pathway and a new potential, life and career elsewhere. But obviously that in itself, moving country at a young age, getting used to, a new culture, still continuing to be hungry to learn new things. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you faced in that journey?
Yes. So, in terms of challenges, I think the first one that struck was, loneliness to begin
Yeah.
with, because first when I first came here, I've never ever lived without my family or my parents back home. So, coming from there, now you are living. I'm living with some other people, or in shared accommodation and so on. It's a very different experience. I also didn't know how to cook even an omelette back home. Now I can cook, rice and curry and all of these things. You just have to. I mean, it is, and I'm grateful for the experience. I think the biggest challenge, the challenges were always there in terms of not only loneliness, but employability as well, lack of work experience and so on. But I think things took a big turn, especially in the pandemic, because
Yeah.
that is something that was, when I came to the UK, a pandemic is not what I had in mind. So when that happened, that was a big, I was like, what do I do now? I remember I took the big luggage the main big luggage that I brought from Bangladesh with my clothes.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I took that luggage to Sainsbury's to kind of store for 1 month's food as lockdown was happening in London, because you don't know what's gonna happen, right? So that was, and all alone. I don't really have any family in the UK, so I'm alone. Like pulling through the streets a big luggage. Inside there is rice and all of these things. So these are some challenges that I have felt, especially with mental health, amplified by my rejection in job opportunities initially, especially at the early time of the pandemic.
Yeah, and that kind of challenge, because you, in a lot of ways, kind of graduated into the pandemic, didn't you?
Yep. Yep.
And obviously, at that point, you're looking out there for job opportunities, and suddenly, with all the uncertainty, companies are just not looking in the same way. And there's a significant pool of students looking for the next opportunity. And in the world of sheer uncertainty, especially given that, for yourself, you were probably at a point where you were like, do I continue in education in Britain? Do I look to build a career here? Or do I start to look elsewhere? I've already proven that I can move and succeed. I've managed to, secure a degree. But obviously all those different options, but as COVID closed everything down, it must have felt, that all that uncertainty on top of the uncertainty of not knowing where your next move was, must have really, really hit your mental well-being a little bit, Shafeen.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, it is sad, but I think I can say that was arguably one of the lowest points in my life. that I haven't faced anything of that nature and sort. Like, what do I do? I did a degree now. I think I completed my management degree in October 2020. That
Yeah.
was still a lockdown, and I'm like, what do I do? And as an international student, not only do I need a graduate job, I would also need a tier two sponsorship, which
Yeah.
kind of complicates an already complex job market and difficult situation. So eventually, I didn't get it at that time. I struggled and didn't get it, and then I had the opportunity at Greenwich. And when I started this time, the reason why I didn't get a job last time was because of the lack of professional work experience, and also
Yeah.
I think a lack of extracurricular activities. So when I got the opportunity at Greenwich, from the get-go, I had this idea that, what, I'm gonna write whatever I've done wrong. So now when I started my MBA, I have literally signed up for anything and everything that happens at my university.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like, with society involvements. I'm also the vice president of the Bangladeshi society at my university as well. So, whatever I could get my hands on, what, I'm going to put my name up for it and let whatever happens. So I think that has kind of given me the exposure to kind of, it put me like I think even many staff at university are, like, know me, even though, like,
Yeah.
previously that wasn't the case, because, okay, Shafeen does that, Shafeen talked about this in LinkedIn, Shafeen did that, Shafeen. So I think that exposure helps when someone, especially a job seeker and also an international student.
Yeah, so I think what you kind of started to really get into over the the past year or so is just how powerful building a personal brand around your student expertise is, because and we've spoken about this previously. There's a lot of considerations for international students that students who study in the country of origin don't face. So when you're kind of looking out to what the future will hold, you're starting to think about your visa. You're starting to think
Yeah,
about the permits you'll need to work in the
yeah,
UK. And suddenly, these are not only challenges that you have to think about, as things may not be renewed because of COVID, or there's challenges around the next stage of that, but also it's additional stuff for employers to have to consider as well. And that means that sometimes as an international student, it's easy to get overlooked.
yeah,
And what you've kind of really hit upon over this past year is, how can I make myself stand out? How can I look to find ways to improve myself, to get my message out there, to create a little bit of a buzz around me, that while I haven't got the years and years of industrial experience, I do have a much wider skill set and a real appetite and hunger to make a difference. Because again, as an international student, especially when you come to the UK, there's quite often a lot of you are going to a very prestigious country for education. You're going to really achieve, and then there's the expectation from back home that you're going to be up on a podium, up in a rocket to the next level, building this star-spangled career. Because so much of what we hear abroad is generally quite positive and tailored towards the bigger dreams. So can you tell us a little bit about how you've navigated that? Because obviously there would have been a lot of expectation and a lot of almost rising you up as you managed to come to the UK to study.
Yes, I mean, I think this is perhaps very common in from the part of the world where I come from, where there are, I think from my immediate family, I'm the a youngest person to kind of, go to a foreign country and try to, trying to still figure out my life and career. So there was thankfully there is expectation from my extended family, and sometimes people ask questions, what is he, has he finished his degree, does he have a job, and stuff like that, but thankfully, I'm so very blessed to have some my amazing parents, like mom and dad. They've always been so supportive of my aspirations. They know my struggles and relate to it. I tell them everything, this is what is happening. If I get like a call for an interview, or or an offer made from an employer, more
Yeah.
than me, my mom and dad gets more happy than me. Like,
Yeah.
they're more excited. So I think so in that capacity, I'm so blessed to have them in my life. So I think that 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 kind of motivated me to kind of go, quote unquote, above and beyond.
Yeah.
So I think that could, to navigate through expectations, um, the depending on a person's appetite for taking on those expectations in the first place. So if we can turn that expectation to power of self motivation, and use that as an energy to kind of push forward,
Yeah.
and I think there is room for personal growth and development.
Yeah, no, that's super, and that's a great attitude to have. But also, it's great that you've got your parents' support, and you're able
Mm.
to kind of share things with them, because that really provides you with some stability, even though it has been quite turbulent over this past year. But what I want to ask you, Shafeen, is obviously especially in the past 6 months, you've taken a lot of courageous steps outside of your comfort zone to start to explore new opportunities and really start to kind of find belonging in places. So what advice would you give to those people who are kind of still a little bit unsure about whether they should take that step? A little bit of bravery and a little bit of courage in the face of fear of going into new territories and outside of our comfort zones.
I think one advice that helped me personally, I think there's if I may share two things. One is involvement. So I'm currently involved with several voluntary things that I don't get paid or anything, but
Yeah,
what it does, it keeps my schedule busy, and there's perhaps less room for thoughts of depression or sadness, which was the case back a year ago, for example. So I
yeah,
think if someone is sign up for whatever they want to, whatever it could be, like public speaking or art, or whatever their hobbies are, the more involvement someone has, I think it helps them keep themselves busy. And number two is to reach out. I think
yeah,
one of the things that I have done personally, which is way beyond my comfort zone, is back in, I think, November or December last year, I made a post on LinkedIn
yeah,
about my mental health, that look, I am struggling, I'm not in my best situation, I need help, can anybody help me with a job, anything, I'm really really struggling.
yeah,
That was my first post of that nature. I've never made a post like that, and immediately it went viral, like
yeah,
literally, I think nearly 150,000 views, and hundreds of comments, and people are messaging me. I remember people offering me money and messages, and I was like it was a really interesting experience. And if someone like me, who doesn't even speak English as a first language, has received that level of support and love and affection from the community just because of one post that I made, I think if people reach out, maybe not on LinkedIn, maybe your university's career service, maybe the NHS, maybe whatever, their friends, whatever works for them, I think there is immense benefit of reaching out to someone, and hopefully they will receive the support.
yeah. And that's great advice. And you're kind of like, like you say, courageous step. There was quite a bit of vulnerability in that post, and you did lay it a little bit bare, and that really connected emotionally with people. And they started to, empathetically step into your shoes and start to appreciate the challenges of an international student trying to, forge a career. And like you say, you've kind of really stepped into involvement, and you've really found community, belonging, stability, and actually some happiness in volunteering and being part of groups of
Absolutely.
people doing great social projects. So tell us a little bit about those.
So yeah, I'm currently involved with multiple charities. I think Serving Humanity is one of them. They do weekly food banks, and in terms of volunteering, I also volunteer with Reach Out, which is a mentoring charity. Every week, I'm signed up to mentor a school child, and like go over their homework and so on. I'm involved in that project. So what these I'm also involved with another food bank as well. Physically, every month they have. I think they do it opposite. Um, KCL, I think, but there is, every month they have a weekly food drive where we kind of serve people on the streets food. And these experiences, what they do, not only do they keep me busy, but there's also this element of, as you said, happiness. And I think there is immense happiness in making other people happy, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great addition to improving my mental health and situation.
Yeah, and by volunteering, you've been able to see how some people are disadvantaged, how other people are facing adversity, and that you're not on your own. It's a shared human experience, and that's obviously really powerful. Now, as we kind of move on in the show, what I want to know, Shafeen, is obviously as an international student, you're ambitious, you've got a lot of drive and you're doing a lot of great work. What would you say to employers who are thinking, yeah, I'd like to more maybe start to, be more diverse in the global talent that's available, and looking at international students and seeing, the great available students that are, currently talented people out there on the market available to be employed. What advice would you give to, those employers thinking about hiring international students?
Um, that's an interesting question. I think employers to firstly to just just consider the CV. That's the first question, because for me as an international candidate, the most difficult part of the entire recruitment process is perhaps not the interview, not the assessment center or the final interview. The first screening stage to just be considered for an interview, just be considered for the telephone interview, that it has been the most difficult stage just to get through the door into the process to begin with. So I think international students possess a lot of grit, like
Yeah.
an ability to kind of push through and make themselves heard. I mean, here you have a candidate who I'm not an exception, by the way. This is generally speaking for all international students. Majority of them, own in a foreign country, most probably speaking a foreign language, most probably not, contrary to common perception, not funded by a family or wealthy rich parents. They have a loan or they're self-funding themselves through part-time jobs here, while simultaneously doing a degree and extracurriculars and personal branding and this and that. So this, I think there is a huge amount of untapped potential that employers could potentially look into. And I'm grateful that some employers are embracing diversity and inclusion, and I hope better days are to come.
Yeah, and again, like you just kind of related to, international students are so often able to adapt and are very dynamic and agile, because to, kind of fit into a new culture while still being uniquely yourself,
Mm.
while being able to really learn and hone a second language and be able to utilize that on an everyday basis to communicate effectively, to be able to be efficient. And ultimately, the fact that, so many international students do work incredibly hard to be able to fund what ultimately is, a great opportunity for them in the future. And that creates a real drive, a real kind of work ethic that sometimes is actually really powerful when combined with that agility and ability to adapt. And I think that, the challenges that we've had in the pandemic, where we've had to, become very adaptable and quite flexible very quickly, really highlights the skill set of many international students about how, they can really push business recovery going forward as we, find a little bit of stability in the future. And, employers should be considering, just how powerful having a diverse workforce with global perspectives, even if you're only a small SME, can be. So as we kind of look and think, there's a lot of value there, Shafeen. What are you imagining for your future, and what's on the horizon?
Firstly, you've explained this so much better than me, Lee. I mean, that's exactly the very well described. In terms of my personal aspirations, I'm currently doing the ACCA. I have 3 papers remaining to complete the chartered accountancy qualification. I want to pursue it and complete the qualification. In the long term, would in terms of my career, would want to establish a business in Bangladesh, for example, in terms of accountancy and finance. in the short term, currently, working on securing a placement as part of my course.
Yeah.
But one of the I think things in my bucket list, and perhaps a life goal, is to take my parents on a world tour. I think
Oh wow.
that's the bigger goal we're going at. So I would really, there's nothing that means more to me than the happiness of my mom and dad. So I would absolutely want to take them on a world tour to Europe and other countries, Asia, and see the world someday, hopefully.
Yeah, so that's absolutely amazing, Shafeen. And all this hard work that you've put in over this past few years, the ups and downs that you've navigated through, and still, you want to repay your parents the support they've given you by showing them the world, which is a lovely way to kind of repay some of those elements and really kind of take your skills and knowledge, possibly back and build something, in Bangladesh. Or who knows where the world will take you, because having navigated the world as an international student, you're now in many ways a global citizen. And when I check back on you in 5 years, who knows where you're going to be and what you've created. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, Shafeen. And obviously, I admire the work that you're doing, and the sheer amount of effort that you've put in to help other people in this position. And that, was really came from your own challenges. And it's so easy when we face really uncomfortable and challenging times to actually go into ourselves and not give to other people. But you've kind of reflected that and are now giving even more because of the adversity and challenges that you've been through. So, Shafeen, where can people continue to follow your exciting journey over the next few years?
Thank you so much, Lee. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm so very grateful for the opportunity, to be able to speak to you and have this engaging discussion. To follow me, I'm not. I mean, if someone wants to follow, I mean, the word follow is a big word, isn't it? I mean, why would people follow me? There's no particular reason, I guess. But if someone were to, be a viewer in terms of my journey, absolutely happy to connect on LinkedIn. That's currently the only platform I'm available. Not so still active on other social media platforms, but anyone happy to connect on LinkedIn, happy to have conversations, and let's see where life takes both of us.
Yeah, so Shafeen will be tagged on to this video. So whether you're watching the replay or watching us live, you'll be able to connect with him and continue to see that journey. And even at the end, still incredibly modest. But he's been elected the chair of the BAME Liberation Society for a whole university. And that's just going to be the start of his journey. What is he going to be elected for next, people? I don't know. Maybe one day he'll be the president of Bangladesh. Who knows?
But, you never know.
But yeah, and again, that appreciation for international students, so often coming over, leaving the family, trying to build a new life in a new country while pursuing, further education. We should always take a moment to just think about how challenging that is, because even for myself, I was the first one in my whole extended family to go to university, but I only moved, 50, 100 miles away from home and still struggled. And, actually, flying to the other side of the world to study is an absolutely massive step. And, a massive respect to, the people who move for work, the people who move for study, and ultimately everyone who, continues to give back despite the challenges. So thank you for Shafeen for joining me today. And we'll be back again tomorrow speaking about things around therapy, how we can start to evolve therapy for the future, how burnout can actually make us more aware of the power of therapy. And joining me will be the wonderful Anna Pinkerton, and we'll be exploring concepts with her. But for today, thank you for joining me. Thank you to Shafeen. And this was a Self-Aware Entrepreneur Show, and we're absolutely pleasure to